US gun crime versus UK knife crime. It's a tale spun for decades. Used on both sides of the political argument to further gun control or eliminate it. But you can always pick and choose graphs and data to further your point, but what's the real truth of it all? Let's find out, shall we? It's no lie that the US has a gun problem. You don't get to having well over 100 mass shootings above all other first world countries without something going wrong. In 2019, murders alone in the US accounted for over 10,000 deaths, and over 6,000 of which were done by handguns alone. But where do Americans stand on their right to bear arms? While seemingly each side is mirroring each other. With both sides rarely ever coinciding with their beliefs, Americans are getting more and more polarized on the issue. Now let's take the UK as a contrast. The UK between 2018 and 2019 had 221 knife murders, and when adjusted for the population difference between the US and the UK would have had approximately 1,105 knife crime deaths in the same time period. However, knife crime has been on the upswing. UK police recorded over 43,000 knife crime offences, mainly concentrated in big cities, which is 80% higher than what it was in 2014. UK knife crime isn't the only problem on the rise, however. Public shootings in the US have been rising at a staggering rate. Before 2011, shootings involving 4 or more deaths occurred every 6 months. But since 2011, the gap has shrunk down to every 2 months.
Well, the headline, Anderson, is that 8 students shot by 2 of their fellow students on campus in the middle of a regular school day, Tuesday lunchtime. And according to the local sheriff, he says this could have been a lot worse.
This increase has caused many to blame the relaxed laws surrounding US gun control for the reasons behind all this. And with such ease of access to obtain a gun in the US in comparison to other countries, you can see why. Something that's been very peculiar, however, is that the UK has also had a steady increase in their gun deaths and violence. Firearm offences have increased by 39% since 2014, leading to 33 fatalities. This has led many to believe that the gun issue isn't an American problem anymore, but a global one. These issues never stem from nothing, however. There is always a source, and sometimes it's staring you right in the face. To understand, we have to look at a man named Josh Baines. Josh was shot and killed in Northampton, just north of London, in October of 2018. Why was he killed though? Over a drug debt of no more than £50. The gun he was killed with? Just one of thousands that have been imported into the UK in recent years. Many of these guns in the past have been imported from Europe, but in recent years the sudden rise in gun-related crimes and deaths has been a consequence of a new global player joining the UK gun business. The US. Police have tracked some of these guns to states such as Florida, which has extremely loose gun laws prohibiting people from buying guns. The US is the world's largest firearms exporter. And so it's not hard to believe that gangs in the UK have begun buying guns from these arms dealers, perpetuating the cycle of gang violence that has been plaguing large cities in the UK, such as London, for years. However, gang violence and homicides by guns isn't what's killing the most people. What's been the main contributor to gun deaths, not only in the UK and the US, but worldwide, is something far darker. Suicide. 24,000 Americans died by suicide with a gun in 2019, being the majority of gun deaths by a large margin. Here we can see how the number of gun deaths in the US is cut up. On average, 92 people a day are killed by guns, 58 of which are suicides, in comparison to about 30 people to homicides, of which only about 1.5 are mass shootings. The rest is comprised of police shootings, accidental shootings, and undetermined incidents. This problem extends globally. This list shows the top 10 countries for human development by the UN. We can see that the US is in the lead by far, even if it was just gun-related suicides and no others. Many have tried stating that furthering gun control wouldn't have any effect on these numbers, and that America doesn't have a gun problem, but rather a mental health problem.
I think that mental health is your problem here. This was a very, based on preliminary reports, very deranged individual, a lot of problems over a long period of time. We have a lot of mental health problems in our country, as do other countries. But this isn't a guns situation. I mean, we could go into it, but it's a little bit soon to go into it. But fortunately, somebody else had a gun that was shooting in the opposite direction. Otherwise, it would have been as bad as it was. It would have been much worse.
But studies have shown that a majority of suicide attempts come from a temporary crisis people face. And the vast majority of people who survive from a suicide attempt go on to live and die from other non-suicide related causes later on in their lives. The rate of US gun-related suicides has been increasing over time, while homicides in comparison have been decreasing. Yet even with this decrease, the US leads in homicides among all other developed nations around the globe, with guns playing a major part in that role. And that's the issue with guns, particularly in their relation to suicide: the lack of a second chance. If someone tries to commit murder or tries to kill themselves, the likelihood of them succeeding with a gun is just vastly higher than with anything else. People aren't given that second chance that they might have gotten had they been injured with something like a knife. The fact of the matter is, an ambulance can't outrun a speeding bullet. The damage dealt by a gun is just far deadlier than anything else. And the problem isn't if there's more gun crime or more knife crime, if they're different or the same. The problem is the lack of a second chance. Because when you're faced with a situation where you may die, people look for hope, a chance at living. Because sometimes, that's all they have left.